There we go. Sorry for being a little late, everybody. Welcome to the Prairie Writer Podcast. I'm your host, Trynda, and I will be bringing you a little bit of a different episode today. It will likely be a little bit shorter, but I think it's good for us to talk about some of the things that are going on in the world with the protests surrounding George Floyd, and I think it's important to talk about being an ally to diversity today. So instead of highlighting some news and stuff that's going on in the writing world, I think it's good to talk about difficult subjects and how to accurately portray them maybe in your writing a little bit better, even though you may not necessarily be from that background. Because I think I've seen this pop up a few times in the author groups on Facebook and a few other places of whether or not you should write about essentially experiences that aren't your own. So the one experience that comes to mind for me, because I write one of my characters around it, is the Syrian civil war that happened and is, I think, still ongoing. I've not touched back in on the political situation since it seems like there's a lot of craziness in general. So I think it's good to approach things from an area of respect and empathy and understand where your limits are. I think we have a mischief maker in the background scratching at stuff. So I am completely lost my train of thought now. In terms of where I think of diversity and accurately portraying cultures that aren't your own and experiences that aren't your own is maybe knowing where your limits are. I mean, looking at me, you can search online. I mean, you can look at our live broadcast and see that I am not someone who is in a difficult situation more often than not. I am definitely a person of privilege, and to say anything else would be ridiculous. So to put that out of the way, I think it's important to realize that and come at different experiences with that in mind. So in my universe, I like to include a wide variety of human beings. I don't want to essentially whitewash my cast. I have, off the top of my head, I have Surkhet Bennett, which is she is one of my favorite characters to write about, honestly. She is a healer in Revival, and she is a strong, independent female of color. And oddly enough, I did a bit of research about her hair and how hair is different and how different environmental factors play differently to different types of people. Neander in Revival is also of a Hispanic background, so he has different cultural aspects that I like to weave into his character. Asam is another one. Asam, said that weird, not the T, Asam with an E. He is also a minority. He is a Syrian refugee that has come to Canada. And in the case of Asam, he is specifically a refugee because I understand the line that I will not be able to talk about his experience in Syria. And the way that I initially created him as a character was that I could digest difficult situations and put myself in someone else's shoes, learn about the culture in Syria, learn about different languages and the meanings behind different names, and even different turns of phrase that isn't necessarily translated the same here. And I wanted to add all those aspects to his character before even mentioning the color of his skin, because I think it's important that people see themselves in those characters. And my hope is one day he will inspire someone else to write their story from firsthand experience, because I will never be able to tell that story. And I think that is part of being an ally to diversity, is including these human beings, essentially human beings and characters that exist in the world, and add an additional layer of depth to the story that you're trying to tell. And I think every writer's kind of dream is to inspire the next generation, essentially, to create art to help them move through the world and help others move through the world. But at the end of the day, I won't be able to tell, I don't even live in Syria. I'll never be able to accurately portray that environment. And I've never been in a war zone. As much as I can watch videos and I can listen to interviews and just immerse myself in that environment, there will not be a way that I can completely connect with it. And I think that itself, and recognizing that, assists with, hopefully, I hope my readers feel that empathy that I have for these people that have gone through hardships in their lives, because to say that the world is perfect and that these situations aren't happening is just ignorance. And part of how we move forward as a civilization is through art. And even if you're not protesting, there are other ways to show your support and help the situation and help society grow and get past this ridiculousness that we don't treat human beings equally and forget about certain aspects of it. So I suppose it's being a friend to humanity at the end of the day. That's just kind of what you have to do, is put yourself in other people's shoes and let yourself feel uncomfortable sometimes. And part of creating art is letting it be cathartic and sharing experiences with each other. And I mean, talk to people. That's the other thing. Like, it never hurts to ask someone how their experience has been. I know there's a lot of people are tired of having people ask their experiences. So maybe there's a lot of resources right now. I could pull up a few links, but I'm sure a quick Google search or looking in Facebook groups or on Reddit. Reddit is another great one to find resources for books written by minority authors that we can help lift people up in ways that doesn't necessarily require us going to protest, because at the end of the day, people are nervous. It is a world where COVID-19 exists. And no matter who you are, if you still have that drive to help the situation, I'm sure you're looking for other ways. And I suppose some ways to suggest that would be to search your favorite genres and look for authors of color and authors of minority who write fiction. I mean, you don't necessarily even have to read books. I mean, you should read books about racism and difficult subjects, because it helps you build empathy and understanding for other people's situations. In terms of genre fiction, I think there's also something to be said about how situations kind of bubble up through that. And that's sort of what I mean about the cathartic aspect of writing. At the end of the day, your personal experiences will bubble up through your fiction as a writer, no matter how purposefully done or unconsciously it's done. It is bound to bubble up in some way, because that's how you imprint yourself on your story. And that's why they say that no one will ever be able to tell your story because you ingrain aspects of yourself in the characters and the settings and aspects that other people can't do. So in the terms of perhaps a person of color who's writing a fantasy piece, you may see difficult subjects such as racism in different forms presented to you that is easier to consume if it is a difficult subject for you. But I definitely encourage everybody to go out and make themselves uncomfortable right now if that's where you're sort of feeling, where you're sort of sitting, because that is how you grow and learn as a human being. Growing through puberty is not a pleasant experience. It is not an easy ride. So it's a little like that if you think about it for society. As sad as it is to say that we're doing this in 2020 and it has come to such a shock to such a large amount of people, but that is, I suppose, the world we live in. And part of the world we live in is, as artists, being able to help people grow and improve society. There are so many examples of wonderful books where people talk about their experience or don't talk about it and write about racism and discrimination. I mean, there's also Pride Month going on right now, so let's not forget about the trans community and the difficulties that they've kind of gone through. And that's why I say there should always be diversity in various forms. Human beings are such a varied species that it is ridiculous to think that there is one skin color and one type of personality and one culture, because that's just not the world we live in. And I think that that is something to embrace instead of trying to force a square to be a circle, essentially, and shape the sides off of it. Embrace the sides and add pieces to it. We're here to stand together and bring each other up. We're not here to forget that the world is the way it is. So, yeah, that would be, might be a little bit rambly, but it's, I've kind of been, I'm sure like everyone else has been full of thought these days, and I am keeping this short because I don't want to add to the noise that's going on, but I think there is something to be said about standing up as an ally to those who do not have the privilege that you have, whether that's because of racism or discrimination because of your gender or your sexuality or any number of reasons. You could pull any reason out of a hat to be discriminatory against somebody at the end of the day. And that's something that we should work on as a whole while we're on this topic. And I think that that's something that we should all kind of embrace at this point. So go out, go to your bookshelf if you don't have a whole lot of money to spend, and see what authors of color, authors of Aboriginal descent, of refugee status, I mean, pick your poison at this point, and connect with other people. One book that I've kind of mentioned a few times has been Jagmeet Singh's biography, and it does touch on race at one point and an interaction with the police, and I think that that is maybe a good jumping off point for a lot of Canadians. I'll just kind of pull in a blank on the name here. Hold on, I'm gonna grab some coffee as well. Not tea today, coffee, because I need something strong. But I think it's good that we are embracing this and working through it, because it is something that has needed to be addressed for some time at this point. And I think that as authors and artists, it is also part of our duty, maybe this is me as a writer and not necessarily, maybe I am just speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for writers as a whole, but I would definitely say that as artists, it is part of our responsibility as contributors to society to say and stand up for things that should be, I want to say fixed, but maybe improved upon is the better way to put it. How about that? All right, so we've got Love and Courage, my story of family, resilience, and overcoming the unexpected by Jagmeet Singh. So I definitely recommend that for anyone who's feeling uncomfortable about the recent events and would like to expand their reading library, I guess, expand their reading horizons. That is definitely a good place to kind of jump off from. Jagmeet Singh is a very good way of putting things, and it does touch on quite a few different difficult topics. So I think that is very good place to start. There's another one. I was also mentioning to people the other day about Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell. And that one does talk quite a bit about race as well, and systemic discrimination and police brutality. And I think that one is also good for people to kind of read as well. And he is also a Canadian author, a journalist, and I believe he also has a podcast, so which I don't listen to, but I should probably give a chance. But I think if you can, check them out from your library and support your local library. If you're kind of strapped for cash and you can't buy them, or the library's backed up, then check out the podcast, or I would say look at your bookshelf. Look at the books that you already have. If you've read them, then that's great. If you haven't, then now's a good time to read those books. And one of the best ways to support authors without spending money is to leave a review. Let them know what you think. Let them know that you liked what they wrote and that it impacted your life. And that is one of the best ways to let an author and the surrounding community know that they have a piece in the world that you can consume and connect with that person in a individual manner that you can't in any other way. Because you see an aspect of somebody in their writing that you are not able to see any other way, as far as I'm concerned. And that comes from that bubbling up of your own personality in your writing, because only you can write that way at the end of the day. So I'm not sure how much more I have to add. I think it is very important that we are going through this period in history. And I think it is something to be embraced. And as artists, that we should run with this. Declare yourself an ally of diversity, because that's what we should be showing. That's humanity. There's human beings all over the world from all different walks of life that we should be showing. And if they are not good walks of life, then why are we not lifting them up and highlighting situations that need to be addressed? And I think it's an exercise in building compassion that I think the world was sadly lacking. And I think 2020 has done a good job of highlighting that situation as a whole. So maybe, well, I don't think it's maybe, I think it's about time. So get out there, write some stories. There are so many places to submit these days. There's plenty of lists talking about authors to read. I'm sure you have authors on your bookshelf, because there are so many people in the world that that's a statistical anomaly, unless you were going out of your way. And if you were, shame on you, and you should definitely go out of your way to find books from authors of color and authors of minority and expand your library a little bit. So I'm gonna close it out there. Keep this about a half hour. Not too long, not too short, but I think there's probably enough people talking about this that shouldn't necessarily be saying more than support, and that's all I have for this situation because it is long overdue. And I think that it's time to bring light to it. So thanks for everyone who tuned in. I will hopefully have the audio version and possibly video version on some platforms in the next few days. I'm hoping to get a transcript for the last one and for this one up. So give me some time on that. I'm a one-man marching band, so I will try and get that up as soon as possible, but we'll see how it goes. It's rough days out there, but stay strong, stay safe, wash your hands, don't touch your face, wear a mask if you're out protesting, and probably keep some milk on hand, but good luck to everybody. And we will get through this, and it will be better for it. And anytime it seems rough, then just kind of remember that nothing bad ever came from a little protest and a little desire for improvement. So have a good rest of your Saturday, everybody, and we'll talk to you in 2 weeks. Bye.